The massive crystalline ship glided silently through the star-speckled darkness. Its smooth surface reflected tiny pinpricks of light, making it look like a living piece of space itself. Inside, Ambassador J1 Park adjusted his communication devices, preparing for what should have been a routine diplomatic mission to the newly discovered human civilization. Humans were a curiosity. They were a young species, barely 60 years into space exploration, but they had already caught the attention of the Harmonic Collective. Not because they were impressive, but because they seemed so chaotic. Initial reports are not promising. Hai-Jin Kim, the mission's lead researcher, said quietly. Her fingers danced across holographic displays, showing countless human conflicts. Wars, political struggles, environmental challenges. The humans seemed to be in constant turmoil. J1 nodded, his silver-gray eyes scanning the data. They fight among themselves constantly. How can such a species hope to join the galactic community? The Harmonic Collective prided itself on peaceful resolution. For thousands of years, they had mediated conflicts across hundreds of star systems. Their technology was advanced, their diplomatic skills unmatched. And then there were humans, a species that seemed to solve problems through confrontation rather than careful negotiation. Their ship approached Earth's solar system. The planet looked beautiful from a distance, blue, green, and white, swirling with clouds and ocean. But the data told a different story. Humans were divided. They had multiple countries, different languages, competing economic systems, and a history filled with conflict. Look at this, Hai-Jin said, pulling up a holographic display of human military spending. They spend trillions on weapons and defense. Trillions. Imagine what they could do if they invested that in education or environmental restoration. The ship's communication systems opened a channel. Standard translation protocols began working immediately, converting human radio and digital communications into something the Harmonics could understand. What they heard was a mix of news broadcasts, entertainment channels, political debates, and personal communications. It was overwhelming and confusing. Humans talked over each other. They argued. They disagreed. And yet, somehow, their civilization continued to function. J1 found it fascinating and troubling. They argue so much, and yet they keep moving forward. How is that possible? Hai-Jin had been collecting data for months. Her initial report was already taking shape, a comprehensive analysis of human potential, or more accurately, human limitations. They are inefficient, she concluded. Too emotional, too quick to conflict. Their ship entered Earth's orbit. Below them, the planet continued its daily rhythm. In some places, people were sleeping. In others, they were working, playing, fighting, loving. The complexity was mind-boggling. A military communication caught their attention. Something about a potential conflict between two nations. J1 listened carefully, expecting to hear declarations of war or aggressive rhetoric. Instead, he heard diplomats talking, negotiating, finding middle ground. Interesting, he muttered. Hai-Jin looked up. What? Even in potential conflict, they are trying to find a peaceful solution, J1 said. But he didn't sound convinced. It seemed more like luck than skill. The Harmonic ship continued its silent orbit. Sensors mapped the planet. Computers analyzed communication patterns. Researchers like Hai-Jin compiled endless amounts of data. Humans remained unaware of the alien ship watching them. They continued their daily lives, fighting and loving, creating and destroying, growing and learning. Neither the humans nor the Harmonics knew how much was about to change. In the vast darkness of space, first contact was happening. And nobody, absolutely nobody, understood what was truly coming. The first warning came as a distant flash of light, a tiny ripple in the fabric of space that most would have missed, but not the Harmonic Collective. Their advanced sensors caught the disturbance immediately. Hai-Jin Kim's fingers flew across her console. Something's wrong, she said, her voice tight with tension. The holographic displays around her flickered with incoming data. fragments of information that slowly painted a terrifying picture. J1 Park leaned forward, his silver-gray eyes narrowing. "What am I looking at?" The answer came quickly, and it was worse than anyone could have imagined. The Vorax Imperium had arrived. Massive ships began tearing through space like hungry predators. Each vessel was a weapon of destruction, designed to strip entire planetary systems of resources. Sleek and dark, they moved with a precision that spoke of cold, calculated violence. "They're attacking the outer colonies," Hai-Jin reported. Her voice trembled slightly. The Vorax were not just another aggressive species. They were systematic destroyers. Where they went, nothing survived. The Harmonic Collective had always believed in peaceful resolution. They had mediated countless conflicts across hundreds of star systems. Diplomacy was their weapon, negotiation their shield. But the Vorax recognized no such concepts. Their first wave hit the Harmonic frontier colonies like a tsunami of metal and fire. Research stations went dark. Communication networks collapsed. Entire planetary populations simply vanished. J1 watched in horror. The holographic displays showed colony after colony being consumed. The Vorax didn't just destroy. They devoured. Resources, infrastructure, lives. Nothing was left behind. "We need to evacuate," Hai-Jin said. But even she knew it was too late for many. The Harmonic Defense Fleet mobilized. But their ships were not built for war. They were designed for communication, for peaceful interaction. Against the Vorax's brutal war machines, they looked like children with toys. Ship after ship fell. Entire defensive lines crumbled. And then something unexpected happened. A communication came through. Not from the Harmonic Collective. Not from their usual diplomatic channels. This was different. J1 looked up. "Is that a human transmission?" Hai-Jin adjusted the communication filters. The message was rough, direct, unlike anything the Harmonics were used to hearing. "This is Commander Seok-Ho Choi of the United Earth Defense Fleet." The message read, "We're receiving your distress signals. Prepare for assistance." Assistance? From humans? The same species they had dismissed as chaotic and unprepared. The first human ships arrived like a storm. They were not elegant. They were not perfectly designed. But they were determined. Human vessels moved in patterns that made no sense to traditional military strategy. They used asteroids as shields. They redirected solar winds. They attacked from angles that should have been impossible. The Vorax, so used to overwhelming their enemies, found themselves confused. A small human destroyer, no more than a fraction of the size of a Vorax battleship, somehow managed to disable a massive enemy vessel. Not by direct combat, but by ingenious technological manipulation that the Vorax couldn't understand. "How are they doing that?" J1 whispered. Hai-Jin had no answer. Her earlier reports about human inefficiency seemed laughable now. The battle was changing, and the Harmonic Collective was watching a species they had completely misunderstood reveal something extraordinary. Humans were not just surviving. They were fighting back. Commander Seok-Ho Choi's voice came through again. "To all Allied forces, stand together. We can push them back." In that moment, something shifted. The Harmonic Collective realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. A species they had written off was now potentially saving them. The stars continued to burn. The battle raged on. And nothing would ever be the same again. The communication room of the Harmonic ship was quiet. Too quiet. J1 Park stared at the transmission from Commander Seok-Ho Choi, his mind racing. "We need to talk," the human commander had said. Simple words. Direct words. Hai-Jin Kim prepared the meeting protocols, but nothing in her years of diplomatic training could have prepared her for what was about to happen. The human ship approached. It was nothing like the smooth, crystalline vessels of the Harmonic Collective. This ship looked like it had been built, rebuilt, and patched together 100 times. Scars of previous battles marked its hull. It was ugly. It was beautiful. A communication request came through. J1 hesitated for just a moment before accepting. Commander Sikho Choi appeared on the screen. He looked tired. His uniform was wrinkled. A small cut ran across his cheek, but his eyes were sharp, alive. "We have a proposal," Choi said without any greeting. Hai-Jin raised an eyebrow. Where were the diplomatic niceties? The careful introductions? Humans always surprised her. "The Vorax won't stop," Choi continued. "Not with traditional defense. We need something different." J1 leaned forward. "And what do you suggest?" The human commander began to outline a strategy that made no sense. At first, he talked about using planetary magnetic fields as defensive barriers, about redirecting asteroid belts to create natural shields, about psychological warfare that would confuse the Vorax's rigid military thinking. "You want us to do what?" Hai-Jin interrupted. Choi smiled. It was not a diplomatic smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen too much and survived. "Adapt," he said simply. The Harmonic Collective had always believed in careful planning, in diplomatic solutions, in avoiding conflict at all costs. Humans seemed to do the exact opposite, and yet they were still here, still fighting. J1 looked at the data scrolling across the screens. Human ships had already destroyed 3 Vorax vessels using tactics that broke every known rule of space combat. They didn't fight like anyone else. They didn't think like anyone else. "Our initial reports were wrong," Hai-Jin whispered. She was looking at her earlier research, the documents that had painted humans as chaotic and ineffective. Now they looked like something else entirely. Commander Choi continued explaining. Each word challenged everything the Harmonics thought they knew about warfare, about survival, about cooperation. "We're not just fighting to survive," Choi said. "We're fighting to protect." There's a difference. J1 felt something he had not felt in years. Doubt. His entire diplomatic career had been built on careful understanding, on peaceful resolution. But the Vorax understood only one language: force. And humans, they spoke that language fluently. "If we work together," Choi said, "we can do something the Vorax won't expect." The proposal was simple. Combine harmonic technology, which was advanced beyond imagination, with human creativity and adaptability. Create something entirely new. Hai-Jin's research database began to shift. She was seeing humans differently now. Not as a chaotic species, but as something else. A species that could turn chaos into strategy. "We're listening," J1 said finally. The human commander nodded. No celebration, no drama, just a simple acknowledgement of a potential path forward. Outside the ship's windows, stars continued to burn. Somewhere, the Vorax were still attacking, destroying. But something was changing. Humans and Harmonics were about to show the galaxy what true collaboration looked like. And the Vorax would never see it coming. The first joint battle took place near the Orion Nebula. Nobody expected what would happen. Human and Harmonic ships lined up side by side. They looked strange together. The smooth, crystal-like Harmonic vessels next to the rough, patched-up human ships, like two completely different animals forced to hunt together. Commander Sikho Choi stood on the bridge of his flagship. Hai-Jin Kim watched from the Harmonic command ship. J1 Park monitored every single detail. The Vorax arrived exactly as predicted. Their ships were black, sharp, designed to look like weapons even when they were not moving. Hundreds of them emerged from faster-than-light jumps, blocking out entire sections of space. Most species would have been terrified. Not these humans and Harmonics. "Activate quantum communication network," Choi said calmly. Hai-Jin's fingers moved across her console. Harmonic technology merged with human communication protocols. Something new was happening. Something nobody had seen before. The first wave of Vorax ships approached. They expected an easy fight. They were wrong. Human ships started moving in patterns that made no sense. They seemed to dance between larger Harmonic vessels. Asteroids that should have been space debris became defensive shields. Solar radiation was redirected like a weapon. A small human destroyer suddenly appeared behind a massive Vorax battleship. How? The Vorax computers couldn't understand. The human ship used a combination of gravitational tricks and communication jamming that broke every known rule of space combat. One Vorax ship exploded, then another, then 5 more. "They're using our technology," a harmonic officer said in shock. J1 watched carefully. Humans weren't just using harmonic technology. They were changing it, improving it, making something completely new. Communication between human and harmonic crews was strange. Short, direct, full of information. Where the harmonics would have spent hours discussing a strategy, humans made decisions in seconds. "Target the energy distribution nodes," Choi would say, and it would happen. The Vorax had never seen anything like this. Their entire military strategy was based on predictable responses. Humans were anything but predictable. A human engineer on a harmonic ship discovered a way to boost shield efficiency by 200%, not through complex mathematical models, but through what seemed like pure creative thinking. Hyjin realized something important. Humans didn't see problems. They saw puzzles waiting to be solved. The battle continued. Hours passed. The number of Vorax ships decreased. The Human Harmonic Alliance barely lost anything. "How are they doing this?" a Vorax communication officer would later report. "It's like fighting a living, thinking organism." Choi didn't celebrate. Neither did the harmonic commanders. This was not about winning. This was about survival, about protection. When the battle ended, something had changed. The Vorax had suffered their first major defeat in centuries. But more importantly, humans and harmonics had discovered something about each other. They were stronger together. Hyjin's research database was completely rewritten. Her earlier reports about human chaos now looked like ancient, incorrect history. J1 Park understood now what the humans meant by adaptation. It wasn't about having the best plan. It was about changing the plan when the plan stopped working. On the harmonic ship, a young researcher looked at the battle data. "We've been wrong about everything," she whispered. The stars continued to burn. Space remained silent. But something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. Humans and harmonics were no longer just allies. They were something else entirely. The research station looked like nothing special. It floated in a quiet part of space, between 2 unremarkable star systems. But inside, something extraordinary was happening. Hyjin Kim watched as a human engineer named Daniel Park placed 2 different pieces of technology on the work table. One was a smooth harmonic communication crystal. The other was a rough human circuit board that looked like it had been rebuilt multiple times. "We're going to do what?" Hyjin asked. Daniel smiled. It was the kind of smile that made experienced researchers nervous. "We're going to make something new." The Harmonic Collective had always believed in careful, slow scientific progress. Humans worked differently. They saw problems as challenges to be solved immediately. In the weeks after their first major battle against the Vorax, something unexpected had begun. Human and harmonic scientists started working together, not just working, combining their ideas in ways nobody had ever imagined. The communication crystal and circuit board were just the beginning. A harmonic researcher named Jin Su would suggest an idea. A human would take that idea and twist it, change it, make it do something completely different. Then they would combine their thoughts and create something nobody had predicted. Quantum communication networks became faster. Shield systems became more adaptive. Molecular reconstruction techniques went from theoretical to practical in weeks instead of decades. "Look at this," Daniel said, connecting the harmonic crystal to the human circuit board. The device came to life. It didn't just work. It sang. Information moved through it like water, faster and more smoothly than anything either species had ever seen. J1 Park watched these developments with a mix of excitement and concern. The diplomatic world he knew was changing. Science was no longer about slow, careful steps. It was about rapid, creative jumps. Another team developed a new type of faster-than-light drive. The harmonic mathematicians provided complex theoretical models. The human engineers added something the harmonics called creative problem-solving, what humans simply called thinking outside the box. The new drive could move ships in ways that broke every known rule of space travel. In another part of the research station, a team worked on defensive technologies. A harmonic scientist would create a complex energy shield. A human would look at it and say, "What if we make it move?" Move? Shields didn't move. They were static, defensive, protective. But these humans didn't care about what things were supposed to do. They cared about what things could do. The moving shield became a weapon, a defense that could predict and block attacks before they happened. Hai-Jin realized something important. Humans didn't just think differently. They believed differently. Where the harmonics saw limits, humans saw possibilities. One day, a young human researcher named Sarah Lee connected a harmonic molecular scanner to a human computer system. The result was a medical diagnostic tool that could detect diseases weeks before they became serious. "How did you do that?" a harmonic doctor asked. Sarah shrugged. "I just thought it might work." The research station became more than a place of scientific discovery. It became a place of cultural exchange. Humans learned patience from the harmonics. Harmonics learned speed from the humans. They were not just sharing technology. They were sharing ways of thinking. Outside, the stars continued to burn. The Voraks were still out there, but something was changing in the galaxy. Two species that should never have understood each other were creating something entirely new. And they were just getting started. The galaxy looked different now. Space was no longer just a dark, empty place. It was a battlefield, a chessboard. And the Human Harmonic Alliance was winning. Commander Sikho Choi stood on the bridge of his flagship. Around him, a mix of human and harmonic crew members worked together. They moved like a single organism. No hesitation, no confusion. The Voraks had no idea what was coming. Their first attack came near the Epsilon cluster. Hundreds of Vorak ships emerged from faster-than-light jumps. They expected an easy fight. They were wrong. Human ships began to move, but they didn't move like normal ships. They moved like living things. They used asteroid belts as natural shields. They redirected solar storms into weapons. A harmonic communication officer named Jai Yun watched her screens. "They're using the star's magnetic field," she said in surprise. Choi nodded. "Exactly." The Vorak ships tried to attack, but every time they aimed at one target, something unexpected happened. A human ship would appear from an impossible angle. A harmonic vessel would redirect their energy. It was like fighting a ghost. No, worse. It was like fighting something that could think faster than they could shoot. One Vorax battleship tried to approach a human colony. Suddenly, the nearby asteroid belt became a defensive network. Rocks moved, redirected, became shields and weapons at the same time. How are they doing that? A Vorax commander would later ask in his report. The answer was simple. Humans and harmonics were no longer just fighting. They were solving a problem together. Psychological warfare became their most powerful weapon. The Vorax expected direct fights. Humans and harmonics created confusion. They sent false communication signals. They made the Vorax see things that weren't there. A small human destroyer would appear to be in one place, but it was actually somewhere else entirely. Harmonic communication technologies made this possible. Jae-won Park watched from the command center. His earlier reports about human chaos now seemed like old, stupid notes from a different time. "They're not fighting," he said to Hai-Jin Kim. "They're solving a puzzle." Hai-Jin agreed. Humans didn't see war the way other species did. They saw it as a complex problem waiting to be solved. The battle continued. Hours passed. The number of Vorax ships decreased. But it wasn't just about destroying ships. It was about breaking their will to fight. Choi didn't celebrate small victories. Every destroyed ship was just another piece of the larger puzzle. A harmonic scientist discovered how to jam Vorax communication networks. A human engineer found a way to make their ships almost invisible to standard detection systems. Together, they were unstoppable. The Vorax had conquered hundreds of star systems. They had destroyed countless civilizations, but they had never met anything like this human harmonic alliance. It wasn't just a military force. It was a thinking, adapting organism. As the battle ended, something became clear. This was more than a fight. This was a statement, a message to the entire galaxy. Some species fight to destroy. Humans and harmonics fought to protect. The stars continued to burn. Space remained silent. But something had changed forever. The Vorax were no longer the most feared force in the galaxy. Humans and harmonics were. The meeting room was quiet, too quiet. J1 Park looked around at the gathered harmonic leaders. Some of the oldest members of their collective were present. Each one carried centuries of diplomatic experience. Each one was about to have everything they knew challenged. "We were wrong," J1 said simply. The room went even quieter. Hai-Jin Kim stood next to him. Her research had changed everything. The documents she had prepared about humans were no longer just reports. They were a new way of understanding life itself. The Harmonic Collective had always believed in peaceful resolution, but their idea of peace was different from what humans understood. The Harmonics saw peace as a static thing, something to be carefully maintained, protected, controlled. Humans saw peace differently. "Peace is not the absence of conflict," J1 continued. "It's the ability to transform conflict." The oldest members looked uncomfortable. Some of them had lived through hundreds of diplomatic missions. They had mediated conflicts across dozens of star systems. Their entire lives had been about avoiding confrontation. Humans had shown them something different. Conflict, the humans believed, was not something to be feared. It was something to be understood, something to be worked through. A process of growth. Hai-Jin brought up her research displays. Images of human history filled the room. Wars, struggles, conflicts, but also recovery, healing, progress. "Look at how they resolve their own internal conflicts," she said. "They don't run from difficult conversations. They have them." The harmonic leaders watched carefully. Humans had multiple countries, different cultures, different beliefs, and yet they found ways to work together when it mattered most. During the war with the Vorax, humans and harmonics had become more than allies. They had become something else, the living example of how different ways of thinking could come together. A young harmonic researcher named Min Seo spoke up. "We always thought diversity was something to be managed," she said. "Humans see it as something to be celebrated." J1 nodded. The diplomatic framework he was creating would change everything. It wasn't about preventing conflict anymore. It was about understanding how conflict could lead to growth. The humans had a phrase they used often. "Conflict is an opportunity for understanding." The harmonics were beginning to understand what that meant. Their entire approach to galactic diplomacy was being rewritten. No longer would they try to freeze conflicts in place. They would help species work through them. Hai-Jin showed an image of a human classroom. Students from different backgrounds, different cultures, learning together, arguing, discussing, growing. "This is what true peace looks like," she said. The oldest harmonic leaders looked troubled. Change was never easy, especially for a species that had existed for thousands of years with the same diplomatic approach. But they could not deny the results. The Human Harmonic Alliance had done what no one thought possible. They had stopped the Vorax. They had protected entire star systems. And they had done it by working together, by understanding each other. J1 was writing a new diplomatic document. It was nothing like the old ones. It talked about flexibility, about understanding, about seeing conflict as a natural part of growth. "We are not trying to prevent war," the document said. "We are trying to create understanding." Outside the meeting room, the galaxy continued to spin. Stars burned, planets moved, but something had changed. The Harmonic Collective was no longer just a diplomatic organization. They were becoming something new. The galaxy held its breath. This was it. The final battle against the Vorax Imperium would happen near the Andromeda frontier. Thousands of ships gathered. Hundreds of species watched. Commander Siak-Ho Choi stood on the bridge of his flagship. Around him, human and Harmonic crew members worked as one. They were no longer two species. They were something else entirely. Hai-Jin Kim monitored the communication networks. Jae-Won Park coordinated diplomatic channels. Every single piece of technology they had developed over the past months was about to be tested. The Vorax arrived exactly as predicted. Their massive black ships blocked out entire sections of space. They had conquered hundreds of star systems, destroyed countless civilizations. They believed they were unstoppable. They were wrong. The first wave of Vorax ships moved forward. Their computers calculated attack patterns. Their weapons prepared to destroy everything in their path. Then something strange happened. Human ships began to move, but they didn't move like normal ships. They moved like living things. Harmonic communication crystals pulsed with energy. The entire human harmonic fleet became one massive, thinking organism. An asteroid belt suddenly became a defensive network. Rocks moved, redirected, became shields and weapons at the same time. Solar radiation became a weapon. Communication signals created impossible illusions. The Vorax saw things that weren't there. Their most advanced computers became confused. "Target their communication nodes," Choi said calmly. A harmonic scientist named Jae-Yun redirected energy in ways the Vorax had never seen. A human engineer adjusted shield frequencies. The result was something completely new. The Vorax ships started to break apart, not just from physical damage, but from something worse: confusion. Every time they tried to attack, something unexpected happened. A human ship would appear from an impossible angle. A harmonic vessel would redirect their energy. It was like fighting a ghost. No, worse. It was like fighting something that could think faster than they could shoot. Psychological warfare became their most powerful weapon. Jae-Won watched from the command center. His earlier reports about human chaos now seemed like old, stupid notes from a different time. The battle was not just about destroying ships. It was about breaking the Vorax's will to fight. Choi didn't celebrate small victories. Every destroyed ship was just another piece of the larger puzzle. Hours passed. The number of Vorax ships decreased. But it wasn't just about numbers. It was about something deeper. A small human destroyer would appear to be in one place, but it was actually somewhere else entirely. Harmonic communication technologies made this possible. The Vorax had never met anything like this alliance. It wasn't just a military force. It was a thinking, adapting organism. Hai-Jin's research became more than just data. It became a living document of how two completely different species could work together. The final blow came from an unexpected place. Not a massive weapon, not a super-advanced ship, but a complex communication signal that broke the Vorax's entire command structure. Suddenly, the Vorax ships stopped moving. Confusion spread through their ranks faster than any weapon could travel. Commander Choi looked at Hai-Jin. She looked at Jae-Won. No words were needed. They had won. But more than that, they had changed everything. As the last Vorax ships disappeared, something became clear to every species watching. Some fight to destroy. Humans and harmonics fought to protect. The stars continued to burn. Space remained silent. But nothing would ever be the same again. The conference hall was full. Representatives from hundreds of different species sat together, something that would have been impossible just months ago. Jae-Won Park stood at the center. Around him, human and harmonic leaders shared the stage. They looked different, not just physically. Something had changed in how they carried themselves. "We are here to redefine what peace means," Jae-Won said. The galaxy had watched the war with the Vorax. They had seen something unexpected. A species everyone thought was chaotic, humans, had shown something profound. Peace was not about avoiding conflict. It was about transforming it. Commander Seok-ho Choi stood next to him. His uniform was simple. No fancy decorations, just practical, functional. Hai-Jin Kim's research was now required reading across multiple star systems. Her documents explained how humans and harmonics had done the impossible. The conference hall represented more than a meeting. It was a statement. Different species, different backgrounds, all sitting together, listening. We learned something important, Choi said. Diversity is not a problem to be managed. It's a strength to be celebrated. Every species present knew the story, how the Voraks had been defeated, not by the biggest weapons, not by the most advanced technology, but by something more powerful. Understanding. The harmonic collective had changed. No longer were they just diplomatic mediators. They were now problem solvers. They had learned from humans that conflict was not something to be feared. It was something to be worked through. A young researcher from a small planet stood up. "How did you do this?" she asked. Hai-Jin smiled. "We listened," she said simply. "We learned from each other." The new galactic diplomatic framework was nothing like the old ones. It talked about flexibility, about growth, about seeing differences as opportunities. Humans had shown something profound. They came from a planet with many countries, many cultures, many beliefs. And yet, when it mattered, they could work together. The harmonic leaders who had once seen humans as chaotic now saw them differently. They were not a problem to be controlled. They were an example to be understood. "Our old way of thinking is gone," J1 told the conference. "We are creating something new." Outside the conference hall, ships from different species moved together, not as separate entities, but as a connected network, learning from each other. The technology developed during the war continued to change everything. Medical systems that could detect diseases weeks before they happened. Communication networks that could connect different species in ways never imagined. A harmonic scientist would work with a human engineer. A researcher from one planet would collaborate with someone from another world. Differences were no longer barriers. They were bridges. Commander Choi looked at the gathered representatives. "We are not just defending ourselves," he said. "We are creating a future together." Hai-Jin's research had become more than just documents. It was a living story of how two different species could become something more than allies, something more than friends. The galaxy was changing. Old systems were falling apart. New ways of thinking were taking their place. The Voraks had been defeated, but something more important had happened. A new way of understanding had been born. Some species fight to destroy. Humans and harmonics had shown that true strength comes from protecting, from understanding, from growing together. As the conference ended, something was clear to everyone present. The most unexpected allies had changed everything. And they were just getting started.